Hi, welcome to Courageous Journeys. I'm Peggy Oliveira. Thank you so much for joining me today. And if you're new, welcome to this Courageous Journeys community. If you haven't done so, make sure you subscribe and click on that little bell for notifications for when I release new videos. So, there's a good chance that you are aware of the idea of limiting beliefs. There's also a strong chance that you have worked on changing your limiting beliefs. And if you're watching this video, I would guess that you still struggle in some ways. Well, first, I want you to know it's not you. It's not you. Focusing on limiting beliefs or the work around changing your limiting beliefs is only part of the process. It's only a piece of the awareness and recognition that is important. So I'm going to share with you today some of my thoughts about this and what I believe is important to be able to focus on. So first, I'm going to start with limiting beliefs and what they are. So the idea of limiting beliefs are that they're the ideas that we hold, that we repeat over and over to ourselves, that hold us back from showing up and doing the things that we want to do. And there's truth to that. The challenge or the problem is that those thoughts, those ideas, those limiting beliefs that come up are actually automatic thoughts and ideas that we hold about ourselves, about what we expect in the world. So the work that we do to change them, it's all up here. It's replacing what we're saying to ourselves with saying something more positive, right? So if you were to say to yourself, I'm not good at this, the idea is that you recognize that, like, for example, if you say to yourself often, I'm not good at following through with something. Well, so in the idea with limiting beliefs, that's a belief that you hold. I'm not good at following through on things. And so the idea then is that you replace that with, I am capable of following through with things, or I am good at following through with things. I have followed through with things. So the idea is that you replace that thought with a more positive thought, and maybe even a more truthful thought, but it's still a thought, right? It's up here. And the problem with that, now let me first say, I am all about thoughts. Thoughts matter, and they direct everything. They direct how we feel and how we behave, and they direct more thoughts. All of that directs more thoughts. But when you just focus on the thought and try replacing it with something different, you're not changing what created that thought in the first place. Think about that for a second. This is the same thing with affirmations. So, and I did a video on this, on why affirmations don't typically work on their own. When you do an affirmation, you are saying something to yourself that ultimately you don't believe, generally speaking. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be saying affirmations. So for example, you might say an affirmation of, I am worthy of achieving whatever I want in my life, or I am capable of achieving everything I want in my life. Well, that's great. It's a great idea. It's a positive statement to hold on to. But if you don't ultimately believe that you are worthy or capable of achieving everything that you want in your life, you're not going to believe that. And not only are you not going to believe it in that moment, but, and this is where a big part of the problem lies, when you say that to yourself, I am worthy of achieving everything that I want in my life, there's a part of you, likely not conscious, at least not in the early stages of this awareness, there's a part of you that is actually saying, rebutting that statement, saying, who are you kidding? No, you're not. Look at all these examples that prove that you're not. This is ridiculous. So on one hand, you're saying to yourself on a conscious level, I am worthy. But everything inside of you is saying, no, you're not. So it reaffirms, actually, because it's energetic in here, it's not just up here. Energetically, it's reinforcing that you're not worthy, the idea, the belief that you hold that you're not worthy. So it can actually backfire much of the time. Now, sometimes it can be like a shot of adrenaline that motivates you. But whether it's an hour later, a day later, a week later, a couple of months later, it's going to wear off. And you're going to find yourself coming back to those same ideas again. Because all of that work is more surface level. But all of those thoughts that we have, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at following through, I will never be able to do this, I'm not good with money, whatever that is an automatic response, an idea that has developed as a result of what we ultimately believe about who we are at our core. So if you've seen some of my other videos, I've talked about core beliefs. And core beliefs is the most significant aspect of all struggle, impact, and healing. So those limiting beliefs are really automatic thoughts and ideas that are a result of what that core belief is. So when we're focusing just on the limiting belief idea, which I think it's a little kind of confusing in a way, because I guess it is a belief, but it's not a core belief. It's more a thought. It's more the repetitive idea that you hold about who you are. But that repetitive idea that you hold, like I'm not good at this, comes from a core belief of, generally there's about 3 or 4 that most of us tend to have. And most of us tend to have about one or 2, maybe even 3 core beliefs that we have about who we are, but they're all very connected generally. So most of us tend to have very similar core beliefs. And within our individual being, we may have 1 to a few core beliefs, but they're typically very connected. So when you say to yourself something like, I'm not good with money, for example, that's an idea that goes through your mind quite often. But that idea is reinforcing a core belief. When you say to yourself, I'm not good with money, you're not just saying to yourself that you're not good with money, but what does it mean that you're not good with money? Well, one of the things that I think is probably pretty prominent there is, therefore, I'm undeserving of whatever it may be. I'm undeserving of money. I'm undeserving of a job that I love. I'm undeserving of taking care of myself by going to the doctor or a massage or a vacation. But when we just focus on, I'm not good with money, and then you replace that thought with, I am good with money, or money comes easily to me, or whatever it may be, energetically, your core belief is fighting against that because it doesn't believe that you're deserving of those things, or good enough to get those things, or worthy of having those things. And those are the 3 primary core beliefs that we hold. And they can be interchanged sometimes: unworthy, undeserving, and not enough. And so no matter what our limiting belief is, that automatic thought, that idea that we hold about who we are, is stemming from that. So when we focus on just changing the idea up here, the belief isn't changing. In fact, as I pointed out a moment ago, that belief is often reinforced energetically because what those core beliefs are fighting against it. And much of the time, that's happening below our conscious level. And that's problematic. So it's more at a subconscious and sometimes even unconscious level. And the reason that that creates challenge is because until something is brought into our consciousness, we can't change it. So all the work that people do focusing on limiting beliefs isn't ultimately changing the core belief. And in many ways then reinforces that core belief because you're doing all that work. And this happens even if the focus isn't specifically limiting beliefs, but maybe you're in therapy and the focus is on treating your symptoms. Well, the symptoms are going to come back or not go away really at all because you're not working at healing the wounding that created those core beliefs. And are there people who have core beliefs that they are worthy? There are. I think there are far, far, far many more people who have beliefs that do not feel good. I think that's pretty rare because, as I've said, we're all wounded. And the way that we're wounded in childhood can vary in vast ways. And for some, it's incredibly traumatic. And for some, it's just regular life experiences. Challenges with making friends in school, sibling rivalry. It doesn't have to be something horrible. It doesn't have to be really destructive stuff. It's just the normal experience of being human. But what we're left with is this core belief of who we believe we are in the world, what we're capable of, how we view the world. That develops at a very early age. And when we're not conscious of what we believe, it dictates everything. If we believe that we're not deserving of something, it's much more likely that we're not going to try to go after things that seem big or maybe a little bit more challenging. Now, some people can because that's how they cope with it. But for the most part, that isn't the case. Or if you get something big or good, you will find that you sabotage it in some way. That's because at your center, at your core, you do not believe that you're deserving of it or that you did enough to get it, therefore ultimately undeserving of it. So recognizing that all the work that you've done is important. Being able to recognize what those automatic thoughts are. What are those ideas that you hold about yourself? That's an important part of this work. So I don't want to discount that. I don't want you to feel like, oh, I've wasted all this time. Absolutely not. Because the only way that you can really get at what those core beliefs are and why you believe that is by first understanding that other part, that conscious awareness. So that is necessary to be able to do that, to do the deeper work of healing. But that struggle continues because you're not actually getting at that deeper wound that is there. It's kind of like having a huge gaping wound on your arm, but you treat it as though it's a paper cut, when there's really something much bigger going on there. So, and you're going to feel frustrated, right? If you think it's a paper cut and you just keep treating it like it's a paper cut, you're going to get frustrated with yourself because why isn't this healing? Why isn't this working? Why does this still hurt? Well, because you're not addressing the bigger issue, the deeper issue. But you didn't know that there was a deeper issue. So it's not your fault. And I think that's really important to recognize, because when you've done all kinds of work and you find that you still struggle, what are you saying to yourself about that? There's a good chance that you're in some way criticizing yourself. You're judging yourself, that maybe you're just not meant to heal. Maybe you don't work hard enough to do it. Maybe you're too damaged. None of that is true. But every time that you say something like that to yourself, you're reaffirming that core belief. Every time you are reaffirming that core belief, which gives it more power. Changing the core beliefs is very much like deprogramming. Like, really think about that. When somebody has been in a cult, or you think about, oh my gosh, I can't think of what it is called right now, when you're kidnapped and you align with your kidnapper. Can't believe I can't think of what that is right now. That happens because over time, you begin to believe that. And sometimes you need to believe that in order to just get through with your day and your life. But to get out of that, it's not as simple as, what are you saying to yourself? And then replacing it with something more positive. No, you have to go in and you have to dismantle what that belief is. You have to completely tear it apart so that you can see the truth. That you are worthy, that you are deserving. So you can heal what created those beliefs in the first place. Because the beliefs that we have about who we are, unworthy or undeserving, not enough, that comes from wounding. And it's reaffirmed throughout our lives until we become consciously aware of it. And this is why I emphasize so often the importance of working with somebody who has a deep understanding of this. Because when you're just focusing on the surface stuff, it doesn't change anything at a core level. It can periodically for a period of time, but again, this is about, why do you keep struggling? Why do you keep finding yourself back again? And this is why. And please know that the work that you've done hasn't been a waste. It's been important in helping you understand what that is, practicing reframing, practicing saying those things to yourself. That is an important part of this process. But just please know that the difficulty, the challenge, the struggle in changing it isn't because you're not doing enough, and it absolutely is not because you're not worthy or deserving of it. It takes time. It takes a lot of practice. Thank you for joining me today. I'd love to hear your reactions, your thoughts, your experiences in the comments below. You and we are not alone. And together, the more that we talk about this, the more we can change everything that happens around us, not just for us, but for everybody else. If we all knew the reality of this, if we all knew, if we were taught about the reality of wounding and the impact it has, if people felt like they could openly talk about the struggles without shame, without being judged, we would live in a whole different world. And if you're listening to this, you are part of that. You are part of creating that change. If you'd like to join me very specifically and becoming a more integrated part of that change with me, make sure you sign up for my newsletter on my website. I'm going to be sharing some things soon where I would love your feedback actually in helping me create this, but also some ways that we can come together and experience healing within ourselves, which ripples out into our broader families and communities and societies, so that we can change the shame. We can release the shame. We can change how we view what it means to struggle. We're not alone. And it's not just you. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time.